It's a really poignant joy to be with you today after so many months of involuntary absence. But it's a wholehearted joy with which I'm going to share with you some teaching from a profound teaching prayer, which is Psalm 23. The depth and authenticity of teaching that pours out to us every time we address ourselves to the Psalms or allow the Psalms to address themselves to us is almost unparalleled, even in the most exquisite of scriptures. These are songs of songs that have served our human family for more than 3,000 years. And the very reason that I wanted to bring you Psalm 23 today is in part because it's apparently so familiar. And yet, if we bring awakeness and openness of mind to it, of course it was written this morning for us, for today. I'm going to read you Psalm 23 in a moment. But before I do so, I have to read you a small part of the much longer Psalm 22. Psalm 22 is said to have been written about 30 years before Psalm 23, which itself was written a little over 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. But their proximity in the book of Psalms tells us something so powerful about the knowledge that we are seeking about who we are in relationship to one another, and who we are in relationship to ourselves, and who we are in relationship to all that comes our way and moves through us, and who we are in relationship to God. So first of all, here is a passage or two from Psalm 22. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me? From the words of my groaning, O my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night I find no rest. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. You know, there is nothing sentimental about true teachings. They want to expose us to ourselves so that we may grow fully into ourselves. And if there is a person present who hasn't experienced Psalm 22, then I would be deeply, deeply surprised. So how incredibly moving it is as we move ourselves towards Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me on the right paths for his name's sake. And even though I walk in a valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup is overflowing. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall live in the house of the Lord forever. When I wrote about those two psalms, and when I put them back to back in the book that I wrote some years ago called Forgiveness and Other Acts of Love, I believe that I said I could imagine David the psalmist, the great psalmist David, crossing his fingers behind his back, begging, hoping that goodness and mercy will follow him all the days of his life, and that he would live in the knowledge of living in the house of the Lord forever. Because I think that is also what each of us is seeking. Now, I'm going to invite you to think about this psalm. I'm going to take it to pieces, and I want you to enter into it as fully as you can so that it can also enter into you. Thomas Merton, a great Western teacher, imbued with Eastern thought towards the end of his shortish life, said we should be reading the Psalms with an Eastern mind. I would add to that, we should be reading and listening and inhabiting the Psalms with a poet's mind, because everything that the Psalms have to give us lives beneath the surface. They are a rebuke to literalism. They are a rebuke to sentimentality, because each one of them tells us a story about who we are and what we are facing. And this is how we learn our humanity, and this is how we learn our divinity. And it helps us, I think, to know that David himself, who became one of the great kings of Israel, had several experiences in his young life that really inform our understanding of this psalm. First of all, that David himself was, as a very young man, a shepherd, and that he killed both a lion and a bear in order to protect his flock. He knew the value of a shepherd. In calling God a shepherd, he was endowing God with the greatest care and fortitude that a carer can bring. It was also David as a young man who, through his wisdom and cleverness and strategic thought, defeated the great giant Goliath, although he was so much smaller and apparently so much weaker. But that lesson is the lesson of wisdom. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord, God, the unnameable one, the intimate one, the ground of being, the source of it all, cares for me and for you. I shall not want. I lack nothing. This is tremendously confronting to us in this age of insufficiency and anxiety. I lack for nothing. I need reach out for nothing because I have it. I have trust. I have God. I lack nothing. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. What an extraordinary teaching that is, because we are used to thinking that the grass is always much greener in another pasture. We are so tempted to rush past this moment to another moment that has not yet been born. But it is in this moment that we experience the lushness of the green pasture. We can only experience the sacred in the present moment. Anticipating it is simply an abstraction. In the green pasture, everything is renewing on a constant basis, and that is the characteristic of the soul. It is eternally renewing everything that it touches. He leads me beside still waters. In other words, we don't need to become addicted to turbulence. We don't need to think that turbulence is the only legitimacy, the only way of being in this life, in this world. It is in still waters that we also see our reflection. It is in still waters that we discover more truthfully who we are. And here is a promise. He restores my soul. When I wander from my soul, when I forget my soul, when I'm called too passionately by desires outside and beyond myself, he brings me back to who I am. And in doing that, he leads me on the right paths. On the paths that will serve me well, on the paths where I will find my companions in this life, on the path where I will find the inspiration that I need. And he does this for his name's sake. God does not need my well-being, but God needs my well-being to show itself in the world, to be of service in the world, to create a world that is itself a world of well-being. That world of well-being that we so long for depends on the well-being of each of us and how we are prepared to develop it, to own it, and to share it. And though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil. This is a most profound testament of faith, that life itself is greater than I am, that I am not alone, that I am willing to receive help as well as to give it, that I am willing to allow my mind to be tuned repeatedly to the music of the spheres, that I am making myself available to what refines my mind and most accurately expresses my soul. And now the whole voice of the psalm changes in the most wonderful way. If this were music, we would say it's not just a change of key, it's more than a change of key. Because now David, the God-lover David, speaks to God directly and says, "For you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me." In other words, your stricter guidance, your unequivocal guidance, as well as your encouragement, comfort me. We do often need guidance. We also need encouragement, and they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. This is not a confusing teaching. It's a brilliant teaching, telling us that we don't need to run away from what we think of. We can be present to it all, and we can also be even more present to what is serving us well, to the table at which we are all welcome. But we need not turn our back on any members of our human family. Participating at the table in their presence is itself an act of profound and sacred hospitality. Rather than turning our back, we can extend our welcome to what is wholesome and to what is healing. You anoint my head with oil. This is a sacrament of such tenderness and such promise that David can only say, my cup of life is overflowing. And having received this, having received the grace of what he was receiving as he wrote this psalm, he can say, and this is the same David who could write, my God, hast thou forsaken me? He can now say, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall live in the house of the Lord forever. Thinking of you today, thinking of all of us on this journey of life, thinking of our woundedness and thinking of our great capacities for healing and for love and for compassion, I wanted also to write something for you this very morning. The Lord is my protector. There is nothing else that I need. He offers me rest in the places where I can renew. He leads me towards calm waters. He shows me what is right for me, and he affirms his covenant with me. And though mine is a mortal life, where death and loss may overshadow me, I need not live in fear. For you, Holy One, are with me. Your guidance and your faithfulness are my safe ground. You prepare a table for me, even in the presence of those who might wish me harm. You bless as you mark my head with oil. My fullness of life is running over. I testify to your powers of goodness and mercy. They will blossom within me throughout my days. My true life is lived in your house, O Lord, in the house that has no beginning, in the house that has no end. Blessed be.